to a drive. It's 8:30 now. We left at 4:30 yesterday afternoon from home. I left at 4:30 yesterday afternoon from home. So that's 16 hours straight, just with a couple of petrol stops, no sleep. But what wonderful countryside. We're up in the mountains, beautiful red wine vineyards, absolutely beautiful. It's quite still at the moment, but as you can see from the clouds, it's quite moody over some of the peaks. My God, only a couple of miles to go now. Just thought I'd stop here and have a quick look at the lake. You can just make out the shallows from here, and the dam all goes around that way. Excellent. Right, let's get going. Okay, we've just arrived at the campsite. Typically there's no one about. I've called the number. They've said they can meet me here in 15 minutes. There's no great rush, to be honest, as long as it doesn't rain, which it's not. It doesn't look like it's going to rain. So we're going to meet in 15 minutes, get a mobile home and stick everything in it, and then go and have a look round. We'll get everything sorted. I'm not going to take the tackle now. We're just going to take the boat, the Echo, throwing stick catapult, and probably 20 kilo of bait, and we'll put it in a few spots if there's no one about, with the view that over the course of the next few days, depending on whether or not of course a few mozzies about, depending on whether or not we see any carp, we'll move between the baited spots. That's the theory anyway. We'll see how busy it is. If there's a few people there, then obviously we're not going to be able to do that, but we'll see. Good start. Okay, we're out on the mud flats. We're just going to have a little play around with the lead to see how deep it is out there. Lovely depth. It's a lovely depth. Very clean. Getting deeper and deeper there. Is that an osprey? I think it's an osprey. Possibly eating something. Several hundred yards down the bank was a carp angler pacing about and giving me the impression he was just setting up for a weekend session. It was impossible to see from the camcorder viewfinder, but having looked back at the footage, the angler was clearly preparing the camera for a photo shoot of a recent capture. Totally oblivious to this, I thought it best I'd leave him to set up and search out a quieter section of the barrage. Love about rural France. Check out the praying mantis. Awesome. Just got the last rod out. We've got two anglers to my left now. on the opposite bank, and then we've got one angler to my right up that way on my bank. So I'm in the central night zone, which is where you'll see all of the videos of this place. A lot of the big carp have been caught out of this area, but to be honest with you, it was the last place I wanted to go, purely because I thought everyone else would go here, but it turned out that it was free, so I've got in here. But guys, getting a few bleeps. You know what? I put some tuna with it's been glugging in hot chorizo for 5 days. I've put a handful out over that rod, and the crays are just annihilating it. I thought I would try it on one rod, and straight away, beep, 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 beep. It's definitely not a take. I can see little sharp jabs at the rod tip where the crays are just hooking up the line. Trying to run about with it. Okay, it's first light. It's about 7:15 on the Saturday morning. There were some kind of mistral winds that came through last night. 1 minute it's dead calm, the next minute you've got 2-foot waves literally crashing into this rod pod. It's quite unbelievable, really. But anyway, we got into this night zone. It was a Friday night, and no surprise, I got stitched on both sides. I'm in this kind of main central zone. You'll have to excuse the presentation of these rods, by the way. It's a new rod pod. It's quite rocky here in certain parts, so I did buy a new rod pod, and I've put the alarms on and the reels on the wrong way round. So the rods are actually pointing slightly inwards as opposed to outwards. You live and you learn. It was late last night. I really couldn't be asked to change it. It's not going to catch me any less fish. Anyway, so these two rods were taken right up to the far bank. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm copying other anglers, because some very good anglers have been down here well before me and done all of this. But I did put them on the road on the far bank. in about, I put one in about 3 meters, and then I put the other one. There was a lovely shelf, I think it was about 8 meters, which is a little bit off the far bank. Only a handful of bait around each rod. It's the weekend. There's lines everywhere. I don't feel like the carp are going to be doing much feeding with the amount of lines out. So yeah, so those rods that were there got bleeps all night from the wind, and of course up behind me in the bivvy I was relatively sheltered from it, so I didn't really know what was going on. But when you come down to the water's edge, anyway, that's those two rods. Up to my right on that point there, we've got an angler with his family, and that's really quite close to me, to be honest, which is why I had to have my rod straight out. And then down to my left, a little bit further away, let's just see if we can zoom in. Look at all of the blooming cars. There are 10 anglers on here. 10 anglers on a lake like this, but it's a Friday night, and come Monday, fingers crossed, they'll all have gone home. Come Sunday night, they'll all have gone home. But we're up at first light. We're watching the water for any signs of carp. If the rain holds off, let's just come back out and have a look at the other rods. There's a guy on the boat ramp here. I'm not liking the sound of it. See the perch striking there, my word. Just off the boat ramp, which is 100 or so metres down the bank, it drops from 2, then very sharply down to about 11. But in between the 2 and 11, there's kind of a lovely rocky edge between sort of 3 metres and 8 metres. And I've got 1 in 8 and 1 in 3. Actually, one up on the shelf on sort of 2.5 to 3. It drops out in the middle. You've got, I found about 18.5 metres was the deepest. But it looked quite barren out there, so I've kept to the structure. Oh, hello. But anyway, I think I'm going to have to reel at least one of these in if we've got pike anglers going across. We're at one of those points where I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get anything here. Certainly not over this weekend period where there are so many lines out. We're going to have to check the weather forecast. If I can make the break for it, where I baited yesterday, I'd be much more inclined to go round and do an early morning over there as opposed to sitting it out. It's been blisteringly hot and incredibly windy all day. Could have stuck it out in the night zone, but it didn't feel like there were any carp about, and I didn't see anyone land any to my left and right. So I went up to the shallow end, up to the feeder stream end, which gets narrower, and looked in the night zone there. And the chap down from me is actually a German guy who speaks perfect English. His name's Robin, and all it would have taken was for me to have a quick chat with him and find out what he'd caught, and I would have been fishing further up from him, where I throwing sticks and bait out in amongst the mud and the reeds. I didn't talk to him. I left and went back to the campsite and got my stuff and fished in the central zone. Anyway, so I go back round there today, have a quick chat with him. Pans out he's had 8 up to about 15 kilos, so lots of small ones. And I said, right, I'm going to go and get my stuff. And he said, my German mates who've just been on Salagoo for the week, they haven't had anything out of Salagoo, so I told them to come here. I missed out on that one, but really nice guy. He basically said that with these rocky faces, it is so difficult to land them without a boat. Typically, I haven't brought the boat. I've got the little blow-up boat, but if the wind gets up on here with that little blow-up boat, you are going miles. I'll probably try and land them from the bank. You'll see how high I've got the rods. I figure that if I haven't got a boat in this spot, my best bet is to stay right at the top of this bank, because I don't think there's many snags. It's more the rocks and bringing them up the ledge. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. We're going to fish until about 10 p.m. I've got a couple of rods further down that way, and then I've got these two. We're not going to get anything tonight, but we've prepared it for a Sunday morning. See what happens on Sunday morning. It's absolutely lovely now this wind's died off. I'm going to bivvy up just behind here, wind the rods in. There's some fish jumping. I've seen 2 or 3 jumps. Whether they're carp or not, I don't know, but they're certainly big. I haven't seen any properly, and they haven't flopped over like a carp would typically roll. Anyway, I'm going to also put some live system along this margin for tomorrow, with the view that when the lines go back in, there's a hope of a quick bite. It's about 9 o'clock in the evening. Just brought the rods in. We've got thunderstorms in the distance. They're a long way off, but the sheet lightning can be seen over the mountain. I've heard 2 or 3 carp jump, so it's looking good for tomorrow. Our rods are in. I've probably put another 100 or so baits, probably 120 baits out, spread them all over the place. Hopefully we won't get too much rain. Over and out for the night. Okay, before this wind gets too strong, 2 fish this morning. One came just before first light, just as I got the rods out, and the second one literally came 2 minutes ago. What are we on about 9 o'clock now, so clearly they've been on the live system from last night. Not big carp at all. Excellent. This fish came no more than about an hour ago, at about 8 o'clock. I fished. I figured with how deep it is and how rocky it is, my best bet of landing them without a boat is to actually cast across to the far margin and bait with the throwing stick. And that's how this one came, because obviously you're pulling them away from the rocks and across the real deep water. And when I say deep, this is definitely deeper than up the other. The deepest I found was 18 metres around there. This was way deeper than that. I don't know what, but way deeper. Slightly bigger of the two. Might go scrape. That'll scrape 20 pound. Okay. So we've got the life jacket. We've got 2 big man boobs, and we've also got 2 big pouches of 18mm in live system. We're gonna swim these across, just because it's so warm and the water's so nice and warm. I need a bit of a shower, so I may as well just swim a couple of baits across to the far bank and get some slightly tighter baiting, and just feel a bit more confident about everything, to be honest with you. Yeah, let's give this a go. I can't actually believe it, right on dusk, last knockings, and I get a take, and it must have taken about 50 yards of line, and it's just dived down into the deeper water. No surprise it found a snag, and I swam out and I pulled it off the first snag, and it was free again, and I started to bring my way back in, and it dived again, and I let it go. And it found another snag. It was just over the edge of this little wall here, and it found this snag, and I don't know if you can see there, but my rig is just ripped, taken around it, and I'm not doing that again. I need a boat. I need a boat if I'm going to fish here. I'm going to have to wind in now, and we're going to get the... Jesus Christ, I think that was a carp out there. We're going to wind in now, we're going to put some bait in, and we're going to give it one more go tomorrow morning. If I lose another one, I think we're going to have to go into either get a boat. There's just so many snags out there. Anyway, over and out for the night. We try again tomorrow. This rod has been ripping for hours while I've been playing another carp. So, rods went out just on first light. What are we on now? We're on 8:14, so nothing for about an hour and a half, and I was starting to think I've done with this daytime lark. just moved to one of the night zones on here because it's a lot of effort and you're missing out on a hell of a lot of hours just doing these bloody days. But I figured we're in a different part of the lake, maybe they feed during the day. It rained like hell last night. Anyway, rods have been out for an hour and a half or so, nothing, and then I get 2 takes at the same time. This one went off around that point. It's not realistic that I can do this with the boat, with that small boat. Certainly not later on in the day when the wind gets up. It's all right at the moment, and it's all right. That's part of the reason I came this early in the year. We're in late September, but these small carp, I had no idea there were so many of these small ones in here. Two more commons of this sort of size. This is upper double. There we are. And I think this one's even smaller. But listen, we're catching. It is working during the day. I think I've just got to go and get my small boat. I think that's got to be the plan, because even if I get just a couple of takes a day, over 6 days it's a dozen fish, which is a reasonable return on a lake like this. I'll be happy with that, because in those 10-12 fish you'd expect one decent one at least. And we're getting runs on all rods. That's the most important thing. All the spots are producing bites. But with this small boat, fortunately the water's warm enough still, but with the warm water comes the activity of the small carp. There's an osprey over there. There's wonderful wildlife around here. Right. And here's the smaller of the two. Stiff as a board. There we are. There we are. This one probably about 12 pounds. Whoa. Okay, it's lunchtime. We've been back to the car. We've got the boat. We've also got some 24mm live system. I was using 24mm tuna combined with 18mm live system, and I've had 4 carp all on the live system, but obviously you've seen they're all small. So change of strategy, slight change of strategy. We're going on to the 24s, and we've got made up an extra 5 rigs. We've gone up to size 2 101s with a kicker, or size 2 continental muggers with 24mm bottom baits, or 24mm with an 18mm on a snowman. We've got about a centimetre separation between the bait and the hook. Maybe just pull that slightly straighter just to give you a feel. Some of them are actually a little bit longer than that. I've got no problem with lengthening my hairs these days. And any of the double baits, just a quick note on that, any of the double baits, you'll note they've actually got, well, you probably can't see that from there, but they've actually got a swivel embedded in the bottom of the 24mm bait. I don't use double baits where they're threaded straight onto the hair anymore. Has to be on a swivel, because all sorts of nuisance species, including crays, can separate those baits. Roach separate them if they're sucking on the top one, as do barbel, and the crays can separate them with their pincers. So these days, any double bait, I use a little swivel and then tie the baits on with floss to the swivel. But the swivel is actually on the hair still, so it's the same presentation as before, but with the swivel basically being used like a bait stock. But it's a lot stronger and more efficient, a lot more reliable as keeping those baits away from that hook, because if they get blown up against that hook, the rig becomes ineffective. Rain clouds on their way over. During the course of the afternoon, 2 more commons grazed the net, but managed to escape the flotation device while I was replacing the rods and getting the house in order. Upon closer inspection, 2 clean tears had been made in the flotation material, which at the time I put down to the quality of the stitching. But since returning home and rethinking the year's events, it's been clear to me that this was indeed sabotage from another carp angler who didn't take kindly to my captures on a different adventure earlier on in the year. Got to just mention that these grapes taste absolutely beautiful. In another life I would have become a winemaker, that's for sure. And we're down in right in the south of France here, and for me, the more south you go down into Spain, the kind of more full-bodied Rioja type wines is what I prefer. So I bet these grapes make absolutely lovely wine. We will buy a couple of bottles before we leave. See a tractor there spoiling the morning peace. He's on his way down from the hills, most likely to start harvesting the vineyard grapes. Porridge and grapes is the order for breakfast this morning. You can probably just about make out the rods there. I've actually put them slightly further out because I was conscious that both takes I've had just over the top of the stone wall, just past the little dead reeds there, the braid has actually hooked in on the stone wall as the carp has run down the slope and into the deep water. So I've put the pod up high and further out, which means the reels, because of the way the pod is, it means the reels are slightly in the water, so there's the tiniest bit of WD-40 coming off them. I'm sure that will have washed away over time, but I've got a slight concern that carp that have been feeding up that wall might, as I've put the rod out this morning, all of a sudden, oh, what's that funny smell? And bugger off. But anyway, at least it's a safer way of fishing it. So we've got that right hand rod just literally plopped out over the edge of the stone wall, and I gave that about 1.5 kilos of bait last night. So in theory we should get a quick bite off it if there are any carp about. And then the left hand rod is fished 120, 140 metres up to the left. Again, just plopped out 10 yards from the bank in about 4 to 5 metres, I guess, on the slope on the way down. I've been out in the sounder out here. It goes over 30 metres deep. So yeah, I'm not massively keen on. You know what? That's one trick I probably have missed. I've only had one rod in the real deep water so far. I mean, the theory is the fish spend most of their time around the margins looking for crayfish. Incidentally, that's one more thing to note. I've actually upped the baiting. I've gone on to 24 millers. I'm using the 18s as well, mixing it up a bit. And I'm putting in a fair amount more than I was to start with. Mind you, I was getting takes as well, but to start with, I was literally just using a couple of handfuls. I put some up the margin, 1 metre deep water, a few handfuls, and I went back to check it in the morning. There wasn't a rod over it or anything like that, and all of the bait was gone. So my guess is I actually caught all of those fish on single hook baits. I'm fishing shrink wrap baits. On the sides of the bait where there's no shrink wrap, there are cray marks. So the crays are obviously having a go at it. I mean, they're by no means severe. They're not that bad at all, but the theory is that with the 18 millers particularly, even if they don't eat the whole boilie, I think they can take them away. Whereas 24s, they've probably got more of an effort to take them into their little crevices in the rocks. So we've upped the baiting with the view that at least by midnight there's still bait out there, so that come the morning feeding spell that we're targeting, the carp have actually had a munch on boilies. We will see over the course of the morning whether it's paid off. Clear skies, blazing sunshine. You wouldn't think they would be feeding, but biggest fish so far by some distance. Fish came on the point over there. Can't really see myself in shot there. Came on a 24mm live system shrink wrap bait over a couple of kilos of 18 and 24mm. There we are, lovely. And just once more, we'll just get slightly closer. It's a very big frame carp, but it's got no, it's not thick fish at all. Desperately looking for relatively flat areas that you can present a bait on, because I don't want to be putting it in the rocks. I know that a lot of their food is in the rocks, but I don't really feel comfortable unless I'm using a critically balanced bait or a pop-up. There's always the risk that the lead's going to just slide into one of these crevices and not give yourself a very good presentation. So I'm looking for the kind of slightly flatter areas either side of the rocks, and that's where that one was from. It literally drops off into oblivion. It drops off from that sort of 3-4 metres. Very, very quickly you're into 25 metres. So I don't think this is the best spot on the lake. I've got to be honest with you. There's a few about on the perimeters, following the margins up. So ticking over nicely. Hopefully a bigger one will come along in the next couple of days. With the water temperature so warm and having swimming goggles to hand, I couldn't resist checking a margin spot in 4 to 5 metres depth. Diving down into deep water to check hookbait presentation and freebait is not something I'd recommend unless you're an experienced diver. On this occasion I was pleased to find the hookbait and freebies in situ, so just a slight adjustment of hookbait position was all that was required. This fish has got someone else's braid in it. Let's snip that. Let's see what's going on here. Someone else's braid and hook in it. Okay. Lunchtime on Tuesday. Beautiful scaled mirror of about £15. Beautiful starburst type scales there, but very, very small carp. Right. Let's get the rod back out. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday. So yeah, nice small mirror. Probably no more than 15, 16 pounds. But we're getting daytime action. It's the 3rd today. So I had a small common which I didn't show you. Probably again 15, maybe 18 pound. that mirror, and then the big one at first light. So all three have come on the same rod, which is the point rod, in about 4 meters of water. I've got the feeling that from the barrage they're coming round towards me. It's only a hunch, but there were a few shows, so they were kind of badouches, but not really carpy like. You know, a decent 7 or, well, not even that, probably 4 or 5 pound pike could do it, as could a zander of that size, and catfish as well, definitely cats. They can make a splash of a reasonable size, and I thought it was them, but a couple of splashes later, and then I got that take, and the splashes were bang over the spot. So it is carp, it's small carp splashing. So the splashes have been gradually coming this way. I mean, there really are small carp. I didn't know that the sorts of volumes of those small carp were in here. Look at this. This is called a marbled white butterfly. No, or is it? You have red admirals in the UK. I think that might have been a white admiral. Sad as it is. Down this far you get swallowtails all over France, which is a beautiful type of butterfly. But down here, when we used to do the I Spies when we were younger, you get one called the Camberwell Beauty, which is a huge, great, beautiful looking butterfly. And they're incredibly, well, they're obviously not rare down here, but that was one that on our French holidays as children we never actually got, but I've seen one. I saw one at Cassian, and I've seen one here. And you also get another big one called the Purple Emperor, and again I saw one of them at Cassian, which they hang around in the oak trees. They're a beautiful great purple butterfly. But anyway, that's the wildlife knowledge for the day. But yeah, 3 fish today. Most productive day so far. Look at that. I'm rationing myself to 2 meals a day at the moment. We've got here a whole packet of Cumberland sausage. It's been in the bag a few days, so I figured I'd better use it all up. I'll have half of it now and half of it later. Moody skies ahead. Unfortunately, we've just got a French angler setting up around to my left. So the margin rod that I've had a couple of takes on round that way is pretty much out of commission. Okay, another small common in the storm. Okay, Wednesday morning, last of the 4 rods has just gone out. It's colder this morning, clear skies. It rained from 7 PM till probably 11, really hard last night. Everything got absolutely drenched, and then it's gone clear and colder, so it was more difficult getting out the bag this morning. I've actually got a carp angler around to my left with his wife and his dogs, and then in between us this morning we have the pleasant company of 2 rather loud French pike anglers who are having an enjoyable conversation at 7 in the morning. Lovely common. very, very typical of what I've been catching. This is slightly bigger. This is about £30 and 5 ounces, something like that. Sorry, 30 and a half, not 35. 30.5. Lovely. We'll let him go. I'm sure they won't mind me putting a few grapes in it. Wonderful. Huge shoal of perch just going past my boat at the moment. Much better carp, mate. Nothing you can do about it. Felt better carp as well. Okay. It's about 5 o'clock. I don't really know what's more offensive, my language aimed at myself or me running down to the rod in a pair of Speedos. Both are very offensive. I'm absolutely gutted. Been slogging it away here for 4 days now, just fishing the days, in the hope that I could tease one out of the non-night zones during the day and get it all on camera, blah blah blah. But what just happened, which I think evidenced, was completely different to every other carp that I've hooked. When you've had 12 of the slightly smaller range and you get a take that's slow and ploddy, it ran but very slowly, and then by the time I was out in the boat it was actually very close to me and there was no sign of any small common behaviour there, no sign whatsoever. It was just heavy and ploddy. Within a few seconds of feeling that real ploddy weight, the hook popped out. The rig is absolutely fine. People talk about fine margins, and I'm actually a true believer in fine margins, and this was my lack of attention to detail that's potentially lost me a big carp. I don't know it was a big carp, it was just different from all the others. 6 ounce lead, I love these leads. Kev the lead makes these. I get 100 off him at a time, and the fact that the swivel is actually infused into the lead makes it far easier to eject. But I think this is what lost me the carp. Just can't believe it. The highs and lows of carp fishing. Just 3 months ago I was so happy with my fishing, having had that target 26 kilo, and right at this minute, I don't even know if it was a massive fish, but its behaviour and the way it fought was just so different from all of the others. But this is an old tail rubber, and it's a slightly firmer rubber, but I had it on there and I was conscious of this, and that's why I only nicked this onto the leg clip. Only nicked it on, but I've had 2 fish and they've ejected fine. But they would eject fine because they're small commons that are charging at 100 miles an hour. My theory is why this has gone terribly wrong on that fish is that big carp not swimming that fast, shake of the leg. I mean, I've caught loads of carp, but with a size 2 mugger, it's still sharp, but they're not as sharp as, let's say, for example, a size 4 long shank mugger in the old version. The newer version are too sharp for me. That sounds stupid, but they are so sharp. They're okay for open water without any snags, but they're in a thinner gauge wire, and the point is thinner and longer with a slightly smaller barb. And they're not the one for these sorts of big lakes in France, these barrages. Anyway, the lead didn't eject. Let's cut a long short story short. It didn't eject. I've got over the top and the hook's popped out. There's really only one thing that you can do in these situations. Let's have a beer. A few more later and it will all be forgotten about. There's been quite a lot of rain over the last few days, and there's expected to be more, but I'm fairly confident that the car's going to make it back up this track. It's quite stony, so I think we'll be alright. Certainly not the right car for these sorts of expeditions, that's for sure. It's a little bit of a hindrance, to be honest with you. I need something far higher off the ground. I can't, with the trailer attached, the tow bar is too low, so it keeps grounding out when I go over any sort of bump. So that's a lesson learned. It's probably worth the money to get a hire van for this sort of trip, just so long as you don't do any major damage to it, which is quite likely. And dinner is served. Okay, morning again. Very still, quiet night. Didn't hear much jumping last night. We'll stick the camera on the alarms for a bit, see what happens. Yeah, got a bit of a dilemma to think about. It's the last day of clear, calm weather. Tomorrow, or should I say tonight, we've got gale force winds coming in. We haven't caught any of the big ones. We've caught a lot of carp, but it's been pleasant fishing. It's been really enjoyable, and I don't think my little green boat there can handle that sort of weather. I have got the big one back at the campsite. I could always go back and give it one go, but rumour on the street is that when this place gets windy, this place gets windy. My gut's telling me we try it for one day. I can actually bivvy up round to my left. The wind's coming from the west, so to my left up there I could actually get the bivvy behind those trees, which would give me pretty reasonable shelter if it was coming across down the lake that way. I'm pretty confident I could get quite good shelter up this side. Okay, it's late afternoon. I've just had a couple of rod knocks. The liners have started, so that normally means there's a carp in and around the vicinity. So potentially we will get a take on one of the left two rods, which are in the danger zone. So we shall leave that running. Got a good hour on there and see what happens. First decent mirror, it's £34. I was getting rod knocks on that. I seem to be getting, it's exactly the same rod that's producing all the action, exactly the same as yesterday. It ran a little bit and then it dived down into the deep part. But yeah, this is an older fish. It's been caught a few times. I'm very, very happy with it. Very happy indeed. Look at that. Awesome. Wonderful. The washed out baits are producing quicker bites. We've been mucking about with snowmen presentations and heavily glugged ones, but the washed out 24mm live system is definitely getting quicker bites, and I'm sure that's because I was introducing a fair amount more of the live system earlier on in the week and they're used to picking up the washed out baits. Crays aren't massively aggressive in here. I have got shrink wrap around them, you'll see, but it possibly isn't necessary. But I don't want to take any chances. I haven't got time to be worrying about whether or not the crays have taken the baits off. And all of the rigs, they're anywhere between 8 and 12 inches long. I think I'm actually preferring to lengthen them slightly. With these big baits, you want to make sure that the whole of the bait is going in the fish's mouth. By mid-morning on Thursday, the gales had well and truly arrived, whipping up the water to create magnificent rainbows. Storm force winds, I wrestled with one last common before calling it a day and heading back to what was left of the campsite back in the village. Although I hadn't landed any of the monsters that reside within the barrage, I was more than pleased with the 17 carp I caught, and more importantly the natural unspoilt environment in which I caught them. It was an adventure that will never be forgotten.